The east end of Long Island attracts an eclectic mix of artists and fishermen, locals and millionaires. But there's a growing group of vital residents who do not feel so welcome.
Immigration has grown tremendously over the last 4 decades. In fact, we are the 5th largest destination for Central Americans in the United States. Many people just don't realize, what is happening here on Long Island.
The number of workers needed on the north and south forks of Long Island has turned the area into a top destination for immigrants who hear about the plentiful jobs.
Whether restaurant work or agriculture, construction, landscaping, domestic work, that invisible workforce that so many immigrants make up are central to Long Island's economy. We are exceeding many of the counties in New York City in terms of the numbers of people, and yet have one fraction of the services and the resources to be able to address it.
Flor de Maria Hernandez Gonzalez left El Salvador in 2017 with her daughter, who was 7 years old at the time.
Tenía miedo, pues, porque ella va para grande y allá.
I was afraid for when she grew older, if she stayed there. When they reach a certain age, they are approached by gang members, men who want to corrupt them. And sometimes, when the girls tell them they don't want anything to do with them, the girls are raped and even killed.
Flor and Ingrid, who's 11 years old now, share a house with 10 other people and a baby in Riverhead. They live in a windowless basement room for which Flor pays $600 a month.
The vulnerability for mothers and children is the most extreme. You have to think of how incredibly dire the situation is in their own countries for them to risk so much danger and so much difficulty to make the journey to the United States.
We suffered a lot. After we crossed the river, we walked many miles under the sun. My daughter was asking me for water, and I had none to give her.
There are problems in these countries that need to be resolved. They're not safe there. Many people that are coming here are coming under significant duress. They're being forced out of their country. The violence and the drug trafficking are untenable, and they do risk losing their lives.
I actually don't almost remember all of it, because it has been 5 years. At that time, I didn't actually really know what was happening and why I was coming here.
Nelson was 5 years old in 2015 when his mother, Vilma Martinez, borrowed $10,000 from a relative to pay the coyotes who brought them to the U.S. from El Salvador.
I was the only kid on the bus. The windows were covered, so we were in complete darkness. So I felt scared. Mostly I would only think about music, because I am really into music.
Soon after wading across the Rio Grande, they were apprehended by U.S. immigration agents.
You remember that I did cry because they asked me if my dad was there, and my father is dead.
Nelson was a baby when his father was killed. Vilma raised him as well as her orphan nephew, Cesar, on her own. She was at work one day when she heard Cesar had been murdered. He was 14 years old.
They wanted him to become a gang member, and he didn't want to. That's why they killed him. Then these gang members started calling me on the phone. They left messages threatening me. So finally, I decided to take my son and move here, because I was all he had. He didn't have anyone else.
I was scared that we could get sent back to my actual country. We got to stay here because somebody helped my mom.
I am the supervising attorney for the removal defense work at Carecen. Removal is the legal term for deportation.
Emerson Argueta is Vilma's lawyer. Carecen, his nonprofit organization, takes the cases of the most vulnerable.
The work that my team and I do is defend our clients from deportation proceedings. In Vilma's case, because a lot of her case centered around the murder of her nephew, who she and the community saw as her son, we thought it would be very powerful to include an image of her son in his casket because it showed the scars to his face after he had been slashed by a machete.
The most important resource that an arriving immigrant needs is an attorney. The attorney will help them get through their immigration court proceedings. And without an attorney, it is not likely that they will be successful in their applications for either asylum or some other protected status.
The majority of our clients are fleeing very severe forms of violence, either from criminal groups or gangs, but also from intimate partners, from domestic violence.
Una vez que yo iba para el trabajo, un maleante me secuestró.
One day, when I was going to work, I was kidnapped by a man who held me captive for 3 days with no food or water. He threatened me and told me I had to become his partner and give him the money I made at work.
Wendy Maricela Paz Manzanares lived in Honduras.
Era madre soltera, solo con mi papá y mi mamá.
I was a single mother with 3 kids and lived with my mom and dad. It broke my heart to think about leaving 2 of my children behind, but I could come to the States with only one of them.
Nobody makes the decision to travel to the United States unless they absolutely have to. Yes, there is more opportunity in the United States. Yes, there are better education systems in the United States and a lot of good things, but there's a high risk involved in just taking the journey. And even if you can make it to the United States, you're facing a very complicated legal process that's going to be very difficult to win.
When immigration caught us, they took us to a detention center.
Wendy came here with her son Johnny in 2017 during the Trump administration.
They put me into the icebox. It was freezing in there. Johnny was not with me. I kept asking the officer where Johnny was. And he told me that since I was a bad mother, because I had put his life at risk by illegally crossing into the country, they were taking him away from me. I felt like dying.
La hielera is the term given to some of the initial processing centers by immigrants themselves. It's very cold. The migrants are given like Mylar coverings, and so those are like the aluminum foil looking blankets.
They do it as a punishment for those immigrants who cross into the country illegally. That's what the officer said.
Wendy was finally reunited with Johnny, and they ended up making a home in Hampton Bays.
I went to the courthouse 4 times. The 4th time, in the interview, the judge told me that the next time I'd need to bring a lawyer, but I didn't have the money for a lawyer.
Wendy was put in touch with a lawyer from Carecen.
Carecen mostly takes cases for unaccompanied children and adults with children who arrive to the United States. There are only a few organizations on Long Island that actually do this work pro bono.
The initial goal is to apply for asylum within a year of arriving in the U.S. and then prepare for the trial.
We will work with them to prepare them for cross-examination by an ICE prosecutor.
Once they have applied for asylum, undocumented immigrants can get the crucial credential they need to get off the ground in this country, a work permit.
The only terms that we should use are documented and undocumented. An act can be illegal, but a person cannot be illegal. I have lost count of the number of immigrants that I have known that have had all of the talent in the world, speak the language perfectly, have the training, have the skills, have the desire to contribute to this country. But the lack of a document that says they can live and work legally in this country keeps them perennially in the shadows.
The 9-person legal staff at Carecen work is supplemented by a social worker. They handle the cases of thousands of immigrants.
When you have the opportunity to really interact with them, to get to know them, to hear the stories, that you just gain this remarkable appreciation for who they are, for what they have overcome, for the ways that they contribute to our local communities, to our nation.
Wendy was making $9 an hour, but when she was granted asylum and got her work permit and social security number, her wages immediately increased.
This year, now that I got my work permit, my boss pays me $14 an hour.
Wendy has a new American-born baby called Christian. She said the boyfriend she fell in love with at her new job didn't want to be a father, so she is now raising her two boys on her own.
I'm not the same naive woman I was in Honduras, where anyone can do anything to you and you just keep quiet. This country teaches you that you shouldn't feel less than anybody else. And I think life is much better here.
Flora and her daughter have had a very different experience. Ingrid has had a hard time learning English and adjusting to the United States.
En veces me pongo a llorar también porque me da tristeza. Yo digo aquí solita con mi hija y mis hijos también.
Sometimes I cry because it makes me sad to be here, alone with my daughter and so far away from my other children. It's very hard.
She wants to earn more money. Getting a second job would mean leaving her daughter in a house full of strangers.
Yo trabajara día y noche, pero por la niña me detiene.
I'd work day and night, but I fear for my daughter. I don't want to leave her alone.
It's extremely challenging for these women to find the appropriate job for themselves, to be able to ensure that their children have the services that they need. And I have heard from many families that they have been very shocked to find how difficult it is to live in the United States. Long Island is particularly difficult because we have one of the highest cost of living. Our rents are some of the highest in the nation.
The immigrants that we represent every day are people who work, who pay taxes, who start businesses, who own homes, who make our society, our economy, our country more vibrant for having them here.
Emerson Argueta is originally from El Salvador. He and his parents came to the United States when he was a toddler. A lawyer from Carecen, the same organization he now works for, helped his family avoid deportation.
The way that I see it is somebody that I will never know helped my family, right? And if that person could one day see me and see that I'm continuing the work, I would hope that that person would feel like their life's work has meaning. I look at it the same way. If there's just one client that will have a career that's meaningful to them in the future, then that'll be enough for me.
Nelson may be following in Emerson's legal footsteps in the future.
I want to be somebody who helps people to not go to jail or be sent back to their home country.
He's a good student, excels in math, and is taking music classes after school.
Something about music really calmed me down when life was kind of hard for me. That's why I love to play the violin. There's just something about the violin that I love.
He and his mother, Vilma, are starting to feel at home in the United States.
Pues acá no se trabajaba, no.
In this country, there's no way to survive if you don't work. So that's what I've been doing since I got here. Working and moving my son forward. That's what matters to me.
Me gustaría ver hasta dónde Nelson.
I'd like to see how far Nelson can go in life. I'd like to see him finish school and get a good job. And I feel certain that's something I'll be able to see here.
All Americans in some way, shape, or form are immigrants. Except for Native Americans, everyone has come here from another country. It is the story of the United States. The most persecuted and terrorized can find sanctuary and safe haven here.
the scenery and everything about this place. It's fantastic and amazing.